Your party arrives at an impoverished village. You are immediately picked out as adventurers by the people in the area, and they direct you to a nearby dungeon. The dungeon is within the ruins of an old castle, but only beneath the surface. Around the entrance to the dungeon, there is a small circular aqueduct making an artificial moat, designed to keep the creatures of the dungeon from escaping. As you enter, you fight a fierce group of blue rats, which is an odd occurrence. You know that there's many more rats going down. When you go back to town to rest, your cleric receives a message through a dream. Apparently, these rats were once part of the cult of Ishamai that were cursed by your cleric's god long ago for their extreme blasphemy, and it is y'all's duty to clear the infestation. So I was working on my system and I realized I needed to redo the biosphere for the setting, and now I'm using these blue rodents that I managed to design. Now in real life, a colorful creature is generally a sign of poison, and we should keep that in mind as we design. But it's not just poison, it's a general warning. I will be making a fantasy version followed by a steampunk version of these creatures. Let's start with the fantasy version. So in the fantasy context, I'm a big fan of the deity creation. So let's say there was once a king that got driven out by a coup. The coup was led by a group of cultists who use fanaticism as their grounding for their new kingdom. When this happened, the former deity who gave the right of rule to the last king was like, no, and ended up cursing them, turning them into these small little fanatic rats. As a result, they are actually a very common sight in areas where cults linger. Now, since they are around cults, that leads to a natural location where you can fight them. Additionally, I think they would swarm. The exacts of the swarm mechanics will vary system by system, but in 5e I would adapt the rat stat block for this creature. But what makes this swarm different from other rat groups? We should have a leader within a swarm. This leader is capable of casting small magical traits and acts as 1 hit point on the bar of health, with few rolling randomly to determine if the players hit him among the others. Alternatively, instead of blending into the swarm, he could be a separate entity in the form of a large rat with like a golden crest in the fur on his head. This leader would also be more powerful magic. I could even imagine giving it some clerical or warlock spells. Picture for a moment if you're in a fight and the giant rat just casts spirit guardians. How intimidating that would be in a battle. I also think they would be naturally unliked by clerics, and I might consider giving them a vulnerability to radiant damage, and having the rats attack clerics first, in order to represent this despise between the clerics and the other group. Of course, all of this is worthless if you have no way to communicate this information to the players. I think the mad writings in a cult textbook might do the job, but you might consider some other stuff. I know I said they're found in cult layers, but you could do like an entire dungeon thing out of it, right? So you grab like the were-rat stat block, and you make this the original cult leader that overthrew that government way back, and he's stuck in his were-rat form. He's there at the bottom of the layer, and then you have like large rats and some smaller rats, and you have some swarms of rats. It's just filling this dungeon in a very intimidating manner, and you can make an entire dungeon out of messing with these rat things. You might also consider some like bagpipes of the sewers, I think they were called, and even some other rat themed magic items. You could also throw in some diseased creatures, and diseases become a problem. You could make a very interesting dungeon out of this concept. I had another idea while I was editing. We could also have the townsfolk know about the dungeon, and they figured out where it is, and they just surround it with like a moat thing made of holy water in order to prevent the rats from escaping. And it could be a thing where the entire town is having their wealth constantly siphoned off to fund this holy water moat, which is the main reason they want the rats gone and are willing to pay good to have the party clear it. Okay, now for my steampunk version. This one needs to be a little more grounded since I'm going for my no magic steampunk stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say they have like special lungs that let them scream at an incredibly unpleasant rate. If I use the screaming goat meme, is that cringe? Throw it in. It's actually a somewhat common problem in the real world for loud frogs to be disturbing peace at night. It could get rather ridiculous. But here, let's make it not an active mating call, instead a self-defense mechanism intended to startle predators. As a result, the bright blue color kind of drives off those predators because they know that's the thing that's going to cause a lot of noise. But a subsect of predators in the setting would naturally develop like kind of flaps over their ears, and that could be an interesting concept. Now, just like in the real world, humans naturally don't like the rodents who try to steal their stuff and make loud noises at night, and as a result, they regularly try to hunt them, but the loud noises are enough to cause mild hearing damage, and that's rather upsetting. Exterminators of these creatures likely have a number of headphones and other hearing guards. It could even be a common trait of retired exterminators to have hearing loss. And what is power without mimicry? It is a natural result of poisonous, or in this case, loud creatures to soon get doppelgangers who aren't actually dangerous, but have a similar appearance. So I'm picturing here is the main one has a kind of longish body, that way it can hold larger lungs within it, and they are the common problem. There is also a smaller species that would be a little closer to like a mouse or hamster size, which don't have this dangerous trait, but imitate the blue fur.